Alright, so we have a new vehicle on the channel. This is our 2021 Honda Ridgeline. It's the RTLE with all-wheel drive, and so we bought this with 32,000 miles on it, and you see it has 32,214 miles. We're going to be doing it had been serviced, but not the 30,000 mile service, probably because the person that had it before knew they were going to be getting rid of it. So what we're going to do today is transmission fluid. It's got the ZF 9-speed transmission. We'll be changing that fluid. We'll be changing the transfer case fluid, and we'll be changing the rear differential fluid. And that'll be the first time in this vehicle's history, most likely, that any of those fluids have been changed. I got the Carfax, I got the records on it, and it doesn't show that any of those things have been done.
I have 2 kids I love more than anything in the world. I drive a Honda, still have dial-up internet. And
it'll be like our 2019 Pilot in a lot of ways, but it does have a different transmission. Our Pilot has the 6-speed automatic transmission, so this will be my first time doing the change with this kind of car. But let's go ahead and just show it to you real quick. It's got the obsidian blue exterior, and it's got the gray. It's got the gray interior, which is what I wanted. I've been looking at, used Ridgelines for a year or so, and then ended up finding this one. And the other thing about this one being used, it had new tires on it, and it has this hard cover right here for the tonneau cover, and so that's real nice because it lets you secure everything back here. So anyway, very excited about having a truck, and we're going to get started with the service. Alright, so in the description to the video you will find helpful links to any parts that I use, crush washer sizes, torque specifications, references to the owner's manual, all those kind of details. So please check the video description and enjoy the video.
Special girl. You take good care of her.
Well, I've asked Emily.
Oh, God. Rory's not going to be a problem. She's totally low maintenance, like a Honda,
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do on this job, before we jack up the vehicle, because once we jack it up, then it becomes harder to work in this area. So the transmission fill bolt and drain bolt on all the other Hondas I worked on has just been using your standard 3/8 inch that comes on a socket, and you just put that in there. But this transmission use an 8mm Allen. So I got this cheap set a long time ago at Harbor Freight. This looks like that, and inexpensive, but all you need, you can just buy an 8mm from Amazon if that's the only reason you're doing it. But I would recommend if you have a Harbor Freight or something where you can get a whole set. But it's just this piece right here. So it's a 3/8 inch socket on this end, and an 8mm hex or Allen on that end. And then I've got a couple of 3/8 extensions. Okay. All right. So the bolt that we're trying to reach is way down there. You can kind of look with where I got the light. And then I'm going to show you exactly where it's at. So let me kind of get this down in there. Okay. So I've got the 8mm in it right now. Does that show up on the video? All right. So that's what we're trying to do. So we're going to go ahead and break that loose. Okay, so yeah, I watched some other videos that were disassembling everything. They were taking this off, they were taking this off just to get to that. I don't see any reason to do that. At least not right now. I guess when I get to filling it up, maybe I'll find one. But for right now, we got it loose. We can get our hand in there to loosen it up the rest of the way. I'm going to show you something else on this transmission job. These bolts are all the same on the transmission. So you got the 8mm there. Some people call it a bolt, some people call it a plug. Got a built-in gasket. That little green thing is part of it. There's no crush washer. Instead of a crush washer, you have a built-in gasket. And a couple of the videos I saw said you had to change this every time. Well, these are over $30 each. And so that's a lot. And when I talked to the Honda parts person about it, and I do have the part number, I'll put the part number in the description if you're interested. But the parts guy had never heard of this, and he told me that their Honda dealer, that he has never seen them replace one of these in history. So he was surprised he even had one in stock. So that's all we need to do from up top. And that's great because, like I say, the other videos I saw showed them disassembling everything. So we're going to see what we can do. Okay, so just figuring out how we're going to put the fluid back in is a good idea because it is a tight fit. So I played around with some stuff off video, so save you some time. So I'm going to use a hard funnel like this, and I'm also going to use this transmission fluid funnel. Now this would work by itself. It was long enough to get that in there, but you just want to make sure your fluid's going in there and not spilling out. So I like the sturdiness of putting this in there first because it does fit down in here and it locks into that hole really nicely. And so then after I have that in, then I'm going to set my transmission fluid funnel in this funnel. And then when you're adding, you just want to keep an eye on that just to make sure everything's stable. But you can tell this red one's locked in there pretty good. So I'm just going to leave these set there until we're ready for that. So now we're going to jack up the car and get started. All right, so the jack points we're going to show you right now. This is the front jack point coming in this way. So if you get down here, go right under the middle. There's your Honda logo. Let's come down here. Look under. You're going to see this right here. This is your front jack point. So one of the challenges we're going to have today is this is our jack point. And then if you look right over here, this is where we got to be working on our transmission and things right here. So we'll get it jacked up first. Then we'll most likely have to find, once we get it on jack stands, we'll probably have to find another place to prop our jack for like a backup safety, because it's probably going to be in our way if we leave it here. But either way, we got to use that to get it on the jack stand. So that's our front jack point. All right, so now we're at the back of the vehicle, going to point out this jack point. So again, coming under the back, right in the middle. This is your in-bed trunk here. And then this point right here, this is your jack point right here. And similarly, this is also kind of a challenge because when we change our rear differential fluid, it's right here on the other side. So we'll just have to work around that. But this is our jack point right here. Okay, so the jack process, you know, we jack it up here, then we put our front jack stands on. This vehicle had these running boards on it when I bought it. I probably wouldn't have got running boards on a vehicle that sits this low, but they are very nice. I'll probably leave them on. But the jack point is right here. It's got a steel bar, and so your jack just needs to be on this bar. This is the front of it. You'd be surprised how much the car moves as you lower it even an inch. So, you know, I try to get those in the center, but unless you have somebody sitting here moving the jack while you're lowering it, it's hard to get it exactly in the center. But as long as it's on that metal bar, you're safe. So I got both sides that way. And then when you jack up the back, you want to make sure that you've lowered your floor jack, because as you jack the back of the car up, the front comes down, and you want the weight to stay on the jack stands, not on your floor jack. So you let your floor jack down several inches, you jack the back up, and then these jack points are right here. So there's the same metal bar. I got this one right in the middle here, and this one actually isn't touching, and that's because the driveway isn't 100% level. But it's there. It's just barely away from touching that. And then same over here on this side, so we don't need to show you that. And then once the car is resting on the jack stands, then I put this back up to where the floor jack is just touching that jack point, but not lifting it. The weight is on the jack stands. Floor jack's there as a backup safety, and same with the front one. It's just barely touching. And so when we get our work started, I'm gonna have to find an alternate location to get in there. So I'm gonna have to move it away from that. I'll have to find another secondary spot before I get under there so that I can work. So we're going to get started on the transmission fluid. So the transmission fluid for this Honda, you want to make sure you get the right transmission fluid. And definitely on Honda products, buy the Honda transmission fluid. It's not the same as the auto parts stuff. And so this ATF type 3.1 owner's manual says type 3.1 or higher. That's to cover them in case they come up with a new number in the future. But at this time, they're still on the original 3.1. This is the 9-speed ZF German-made transmission. Shake before using. I've never seen that before on any car fluid that you have to shake before using, but we will do that. Okay, so basically most of the preventive maintenance fluids that we change, whether it be oil, automatic transmission fluid, transfer case fluid, rear differential fluid, coolant, is all basically the same thing, where you have some sort of reservoir in your vehicle that holds fluid, and that fluid needs changed, and it's got some sort of cap where that's filled, and it's got some sort of place where that's emptied. And so most of what we're doing is, in most of these jobs, we'll remove our fill cap first to make sure that we can get it off, because the last thing you want to do is drain all your fluid out and then realize that your top bolt is stuck and you can't get any fluid back in. So we loosen that first. So we already took our top bolt off of our transmission. So when we get under there, we're going to be finding the drain bolt, whether it's literally on the bottom or on the side of the bottom, it doesn't matter, wherever they put it. We're going to take that off. We're going to drain our fluid out. We're going to replace that cap, and then we'll come back and refill it and put the cap on, and we're done. So that's basically what we're doing. The only difference on some transmissions, and this is one of them, is you notice there's no dipstick on this one. So what they do is they say, okay, this is your transmission fluid reservoir. You have your fill on the top. You got your drain plug somewhere on the bottom, either here or here, wherever they put it. We want the level to be here. This is the target level. So what they do is they add what's called a, like I call it, a check bolt. So this top one, you know, would be the fill. This would be the drain that they all have, fill and drain. And then there's a check bolt. And so what they do is they say, well, this is the target level. We want all this to be full of fluid. So the way that you would check that is when you're filling it back up after you've drained your old stuff and put your plug back in, and now you're filling it in from the top, is they would say that you could put a certain amount in, and then you run your vehicle for a while, and then they're going to put that check bolt right there, right where they want the level to be. And they're going to say, run your vehicle for a while with a pan underneath and keep adding fluid till it starts leaking out. And then you know you got the right level, you can put your check bolt back in and you're done. And that's fine. I've done it that way. I've done it that way on other cars to make sure. But when you watch enough videos and you do it enough yourself, you realize that's really not necessary. For this car, on the transmission, the capacity is 3.7 quarts. But what I'm going to do this first time, since I know this has never been changed, and this is what Honda put in it, is I'm going to measure what comes out. So I'm going to measure what comes out just to see. So that's what we're going to do. But for the transfer case assembly, it's a similar thing. There's going to be a drain bolt at the bottom, a fill bolt at the top. Now this top bolt can also be on the side. Now on the transfer case and the rear differential, the difference is the fill bolt acts as your check bolt on that. So on those, it's kind of like, because you're under the car working, you know, you've got a drain bolt that's either on the bottom of the pan or on the side. It doesn't matter. That's your drain. And then your fill bolt can be on the top, but usually in this case they'll probably put it on a side, and it can be on a different side of the pan. It doesn't matter. And so what we'll do on those is we'll make sure that we can loosen that bolt and take it off, so that we know we can put fluid back in. Then we'll drain our fluid. Then we'll put our drain bolt back, and then we'll have to use a little, you know, we'll have our quart bottle or whatever bottle we're going to use, and we'll take fluid out of there either with a pump and pump the fluid in, or we'll take it out in a big syringe and plunge it in. And you do that, and as the stuff goes in, it just keeps filling up until it reaches that point, and then as you plunge it in, it's going to spill back out, and that's when you know you're done. And then you put your fill bolt back in, and you're finished. So that's kind of the process of what we're doing. So we're going to get started. We're going to find our fill bolt and drain bolt. We're going to identify those under the car, and they will, on this car, take that same 8mm Allen wrench. We're not going to mess with our check bolt. We're going to leave it where it's at. We're only going to loosen and we've already got the fill bolt. So all we have to do on the transmission now is identify our drain bolt and drain our fluid out. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm looking for an alternate location underneath the car to put my floor jack as a safety so that I can work under here. And I found this tow hook over here. So when you look right here, there's your tow hook. So we're going to go ahead and just rest our floor jack right there, and that'll be an added safety. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so coming in from the front middle, just some orientation things so you can find these drain plugs, because you get under there and there's bolts everywhere and you want to make sure you got the right one. So this is our jack point for reference. Also for reference, there's our oil pan right there. So right behind our floor jack point, we have our transmission. Okay, so what I'm pointing to here is the transmission fluid drain. I've got it labeled ATF drain for automatic transmission fluid drain. And then if we look behind that, let me get my bearings right. So this is our ATF drain. And then this is our transfer case. So if we go back to that, this is our transfer case. So this would be our transfer case drain bolt. And then if we come up the side of it, this is our transfer case fill bolt, okay? And that's the one that's also serves as a dual fill bolt and check bolt, because we will, you know, back here we'll end up taking this out to make sure we can loosen it. Then we'll drain everything, then we'll put that back, and then we'll fill here until it starts to spill out. Then we'll put that back and it'll be done. So that's what we're doing now, is the transmission and the transfer case. Okay, so now that you know where we're doing, it's hard to get the video down in here, but you know what I'm loosening. So I'm using that 8mm hex or Allen to loosen the automatic transmission fluid drain bolt. Really wasn't on that tight. All right, I could loosen it by hand and let the liquid get all over me. It's not hot. I'm just gonna try this just to see if it kind of helps get that off of there without my hand being right there. So the good news is this looks like it's gonna drain straight down. It worked. It stayed on the ratchet, so that's cool. Alright, so that's coming out. So here's that plug. See, it's the same as the top one. And it does not have a magnet. So a lot of transmission bolts have magnets to catch, you know, shavings, but this does not. So we're just going to wipe that off real well, because we're going to reuse that with that gasket, that built-in gasket. So again, no crush washer. Don't add a crush washer. It's not designed to have one. You might get a leak if you do. These, I believe the torque spec is 26 foot-pounds. That's up to you if you want to use a torque wrench. The main thing is you don't over-tighten and you put them on snug. Okay, so we're just barely dripping now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a rag, kind of wipe that surface. Even though it's going to still drip, we just kind of want to get a good clean surface for that gasket to go up against. And we're going to start slowly screwing. You always want to start these things by hand before you grab a tool, so you don't cross thread. You're not going to cross thread if it goes in easy by hand. And then these go in easy a long ways, so you know, really can go right from hand tightening to our torque wrench. Again, you don't have to use a torque wrench if you're, you know, pretty familiar with how tight things should be. You could snug that up. The only thing I'm really a stickler on with the torque wrench is wheel lug nuts. That's a big safety item. But I do usually use a torque wrench just to make sure, mainly because I'm doing these videos and everything, but you don't have to. This is 26 foot-pounds. So that's already it. See, that's not a lot. 26 foot-pounds is not a lot. You don't want to over tighten, and that's why if you have a torque wrench, it only takes a minute to grab it. So that drain plug's back in. This was from the factory like this, so this is interesting to see what it's got in it. So we've got our main jug here that we dispose of at the auto parts store, but before we dump it in there, I've got to use this to figure out how much we got up. So I'll do that real quick. If you would, let me know when I get to the 2, because I want to stop it right at the 2. Like a blackish green color. Tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay. So that's 2 quarts. Get rid of that. See what we got left. I'm hoping it's close to 1.5. We will find out. Oh my. It's more than that, isn't it? It's almost 4 quarts. So we got 3.8 quarts. We got 3.8. Interesting. I'm not going to put in the whole 3.8 because that's larger than the design capacity that's written right in my owner's manual. Okay, so the videos I saw said 3.7 quart capacity, 3.5 quarts for a change. It's not actually right. It's 3.7. So if you look, this is the owner's manual on page 575. Automatic transmission fluid tells you to use Honda ATF type 3.1 or higher. Capacity change 3.7 US quarts or 3.5 liters. So we will change 3.7 quarts. Okay, that's straight from the owner's manual. It's saying that that's the total capacity and that all of it should drain and that you should change all of it. So that's what we're going to do, is change 3.7 quarts. Okay, as we've confirmed with the owner's manual, 3.7 quarts. So we use this ATF type 3.1. I've already taken 0.7 quarts out of this and put in my pitcher. So then I'll add 3 full quarts after this. We've got our little funnel set up. So we're just going to confirm that that red funnel is locked in, and it is. We got our transmission funnel here. So we just start filling. It's a green color. Stuff that came out, you could tell was green, but it had a more of a blackish tint. Can you hold that up just while I grab my other quarts? That little thumb, see that little thumb thing it gives you right there? Little tab. I've already shaken all these. They all say shake well. I already shook all the bottles up. This is our last one. All right, so we're gonna do our transfer case assembly. This is the Hypoid gear oil, HGO-1, but you're gonna wanna pick this up also at the Honda parts store. Again, I'll put the prices I paid in the description. I'm sure the prices will change, but it'll give you an idea. They really have not changed much in the last couple of years. So anyway, this takes, I think it's 0.45 quarts. But again, we're filling it up till it drains. So what I did was I put a little more than that. I had used this on the Pilot a couple years back, and so it had a little over a half quart in it. I just put it all in here. And what I'm gonna do, there's two main ways to do this. Some people like using these little quart bottle things. I'll put a link in the description. This is where you can just screw this into your quart bottle and pump this. But man, it takes forever. So what I'm starting to do is pour it into a pitcher like this, and then use this. I'll put links to all this in the description. Got this Mityvac fluid extractor. I'll put a link in the description, and basically I have it apart because I always clean it out. But basically you just puts together this easy and takes apart that easy. And then I'll just plunge it out, take it out of the pitcher, put this in the fill hole, plunge it in, and then I have to do that, a few times until we're done. Much quicker for me than using the other. So we're gonna get under there now. We're gonna get our fill bolt off, then we'll get our drain bolt off. We'll go from there. Our 3/8 inch. You can use a breaker bar. This is an extendable ratchet. I got at Harbor Freight that I like. So we're going to use that to empty our fluid. So this is a transfer case fluid. Okay, couple things. It's too close. There's some interference, so I'm going to need a very small extension to clear. I'm also going to grab some better gloves because that looks like a potential knuckle breaker to me. All right, so make sure you got some gloves that have some real padding, like on the back of your knuckles, because you're going to be putting some pressure on that. Got the smallest 3/8 inch extension I have, just to hopefully this will work. If not, we'll figure something out. That was not easy, but we got it. So that's why you want to make sure you can get your fill bolt off before you drain your fluid, because this is factory torqued. I hope they did it right, but man, it sure seemed like a lot. All right, so okay, so we have our fill bolt off and it is dripping a little. just slightly, but now we're going to take the drain bolt off. Okay, we got it. I'll try my idea again with that ratchet. Gotta get my fingers out of the way with this battery powered one, just to kind of keep my fingers out of the way when it breaks free. That worked nicely on the other one. I'm gonna need that extension again. Okay, worked pretty nicely. Okay, now on this one, I don't have my crush washer. You always want to look, so that means that my crush washer is still on there. Whereas on this fill bolt, see, there's my crush washer right there. I need to replace both of those. I'm gonna go ahead and take that one off. But you always want to check, because if you leave one on there and you add another, you're gonna have a leak. Okay, so for these bolts, I need a 20 millimeter crush washer for both bolts on the transfer case assembly. If you don't want to buy those somewhere else, if you don't want to order them off of Amazon or something, you can pick those up at your Honda parts store when you go pick up your fluids. So 20 millimeters times 2 for the transfer case job. When we get to the rear differential, that's going to need a 20 millimeter and an 18 millimeter. So if you're doing these jobs at the same time, like you probably should be, you're going to want to pick up 3 20 millimeter crush washers and 1 18 millimeter crush washer. Yeah, there's no crush washer stuck on there. So maybe it's in the pan. Let's pull this out and look. Yep, there it is. Fell off right there. So as long as it's accounted for. So good to know. Okay, so the torque specs for both these are 33 foot-pounds. So the first thing we're going to do is put the bottom one on. The drain bolt, we're going to put it back on. Start it by hand. We have our new crush washers on already. Our surfaces are all clean. We just do it by hand all the way till we make contact. Wipe everything up real nice and dry. That way you can tell if you have any leaks, which I don't see how you could have. 33 foot-pounds. I've already got my torque wrench set. Okay, it's already there. So now we're ready to add. Remember, we're going to use that Mityvac. So what we're going to do is put a plunger in our pitcher. We're going to plunge up as much as we can to limit the amount of times we got to do this. Okay. And go back under here with our rag. We got our plastic sheeting to protect our concrete. Don't have a lot of shoulder room. I'm gonna lift this out of the pitcher. I'm gonna put my tube in the fill, get it all the way in there, and then just plunge it in. As long as you have your tube angled down, shouldn't have any problems. Okay, so now can I do this under the car? That's the question. I may need to come out. I'm going to come out in between. If I had it jacked up more, I may not need to, but I don't have a lot of clearance under there, so I'm just going to come out in between. And again, alternate method would be to use that plunger. I'm just going to use my rag instead of dragging my pitcher under the car every time I take a chance of spilling it. So I'm just going to use a rag, come back under here, line it up, get the tube kind of angled down like that, plunge it in. It's already running out, so that's it. We're done. Okay. Okay, that's done. Okay, so coming under the back, notice I moved my jack. Where you see these jacks now are not jack points, they're just emergency backup. So never try to jack from where I've got them. They're just to help if something happened with my jack stands. So coming under the back, see everything we're working on is right where that floor jack would have been. This was our jack point. So you see where I got my ratchet right here with an extension going through this hole, because on the other side of this hole is my rear differential fill bolt. So going down a little further, so right under that jack point you'll see this is the rear differential right here. So where I've got this socket is where I need to loosen my fill bolt. So I used an extension to get me back, get me on this other side, and right here. So anyway, so that's the fill bolt, and then the drain bolt is right here. Right here. Okay, so same process where we make sure we can get our fill bolt off and removed, set aside. That takes a 20mm crush washer. Then we make sure we get our fill bolt or drain bolt off. It's a 18mm crush washer. Both of those will tighten to 35 foot-pounds. So we'll drain it, we'll replace the crush washer, torque it down, then we'll fill. Capacity on this I think is 1.92 quarts. So we'll put 2 quarts in a pitcher, put that in, and see if that does it. And we're gonna right now try and get these bolts loose. They are tough. So again, wear some good gloves. And be watchful. Never put the pressure towards your face. Don't want to knock any teeth out. So we're gonna do the fun part of loosening up these bolts right now. So it's really hard to get leverage when you're under like this without using a lift. But I want to make sure that my face isn't under this because I'm pulling it I'm pulling it down towards me, so I'm going to keep my head out of the way so that if this breaks free, it'll go over my head like that. All right, I think the factory might be doing a little higher torques than their manual says. So what I'm going to do on this, I'm going to switch to a breaker bar. I'm going to get my socket out of here. I'm going to switch to a breaker bar and a pipe. So I'll be right back. Plan B, 3/8 inch breaker bar. You can tell these are very small, so I'm not getting a lot of torque out of that. Put that on. I got a pipe that I can slide over this and get more torque when I need it. So I'm going to try to get this set up. Okay. Yep, I got it. I was hoping that wasn't just the end falling off the bolt. So that was a bear. Before I loosen that and get leaks and have to work around leaks, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the other one. I don't need that long of an extension on the other one, but I probably would benefit from, well, I might, but we'll see. You want to basically use no extension if you don't need it, and shorten if you do. Try this, the shortest one. And that in. It's already got the breaker bar, I'm just going to stick with it. Need to think through it, always make sure you're going the right direction. So, don't want to be tightening it when we're supposed to be loosening it. So, alright, let's see. Okay, that wasn't so bad, mainly probably because I could get a better angle on it. Alright, so now I get my drain pan under here. I got them both cracked open. That was not fun. Taking the top one off. Actually, I think I'm just gonna get the bottom one off so that the top one I don't have to worry about leaking. Okay, spilled a little. Now I don't have to worry about the top one leaking at all because the level's down. Okay, both my crush washers stayed on my bolts, which is nice. Alright. Just for my back and neck purposes, I'm going to slide on out of here for a second to show you these crush washers. instead of staying in this position forever. All right, let's take a look at what we got here. Okay, so this is the larger one on the top. This is the one that was a bear. This is our old crush washer. Always make sure you keep track of that. So we're gonna put that over there. We're gonna throw it away. I'll just keep it right here because I'm gonna put my new ones on right now so I don't mix them up. So this is the top one. It is different. It's got a 20 millimeter, just like the transfer case assembly has a 20 millimeter. So I have a new 20 millimeter right here. I'll go ahead and put that on. So now that's ready to go. Set it right back under there. Now this is smaller. It's got an 18, so I'm gonna take that off. So those are my trash ones. But you see this one has a magnet. This is the drain bolt, has a magnet so it can catch metal shavings. And this looks very clean for a first rear diff change and 32,000 miles. So you see the metal shavings on this rag. You see that? That's hardly anything. That's a very good sign. So, because usually as the time goes on, they get less and less over time. I've never seen one that clean. So here's our new 18 millimeter crush washer ready to go. These are supposed to go, I'm gonna put, since these are both dirty and we don't have any, I don't like to mix my old and new crush washers, even though you should be able to tell. So now that I've got my new ones out of here, I know that those are all to be thrown in the trash. So now we'll put the fill bolt on by hand. All right, so we're gonna go back under here. Our drip, keep forgetting my rag. Okay, it is barely dripping. So we're going to take our drain bolt, the one with the magnet and 18 millimeter crush washer. Give it a little wipe clean there, just to make sure there's nothing on the surface. We're going to start threading it back in by hand. As always start things by hand. Don't want to have problems by cross threading. I'll take my torque wrench. I believe the spec is 35 on this. Okay. Okay. All right, for our rear differential fluid, the owner's manual says 1.92 quarts. So it takes Honda dual pump fluid 2. It's just over $10 a quart. I'll put all that in the description. So when my wife went and picked this up, I went and called ahead, got everything organized at the parts counter. My wife picked it up for me. I look at it and I'm like, this is not the bottle I'm used to. A gray bottle with Honda and red and dual pump fluid 2. It says Acura all-wheel drive fluid DPSF, which is dual pump fluid, but not dual pump fluid 2. So I'm thinking that we got the wrong stuff. So I do a Google search and quickly find that due to supply chain issues, Honda is using this instead, and it is the exact same fluid. So I got that confirmed. So if you're doing this, you ask for dual pump fluid 2, but if you get this bottle, it is the same thing. It has to do with global supply chain issues. That's what I've been told. So what we did, we could use this quart pump that you thread into the quart and pump it out like this, but it takes like 100 or more pumps to do it that way. So what I started doing is I put the 2 quarts in this pitcher. It's red. I'm going to use the Mityvac fluid extractor, like a big syringe. Okay, so we're going to get our first plunger out of here. We'll put that in there. So you can tell, yeah, it's probably going to take more like 8 to 12 of these. We'll see. It's going to take me a while. So we'll see. Basically all I'm doing now, I'm going to feed this through that same hole that my socket was fed through. Make sure the tube's in the hole, and then push in on the syringe. And we just keep doing that until it leaks out. When it leaks out, we know we're done. So now what I gotta try to do is get all that in here for this last one. This hopefully will be our last one. So I might have to, you know, tilt the picture a little bit. Just try to get it as much as I can. Okay. So that's pretty good. A few drops at the bottom. Okay, the owner's manual calls for 1.92 quarts. We put in 2 quarts. It didn't quite drain, but we're not going to open up another quart bottle to get a couple drops in. I'm going to go ahead and get this in there. Need our extension for that. Get it started. Can't really get my hand up there. It's going in nice. Okay, now that I got it kind of there, I'm gonna grab a rag, just kind of make sure everything's clean. Okay. Now we got our torque at 35 foot-pounds. Get our ratchet on there, our torque wrench. There we go. Okay, got that. That's done. Now, that completes the rear diff. Okay, so now I'm going to take the car off of jack stands. So reverse order, I'll get rid of the rear jack stands first. So when I jack up the rear, the front's going to come down a little more. So I'm going to loosen this up a little bit. Give it a couple inches or more. Now I'm going to go back. Rid of the rear jack stands. Get it out of the way. Set this down gently. Line up the front again. Make sure that I'm in the right spot. Set it down gently. All right. Okay, so remember we're putting our top bolt in right there. If you can kind of see it, that's where we're going with it. So I got to see if I can reach down in there with my hand and get it started by hand. Yep, no problem. We saved a lot of time by not taking off all this plastic stuff. So it's already in there. Now I'm going to torque it to 26 foot-pounds. So got my torque wrench set to 26 foot-pounds. I've got 2 extensions on here and an 8mm hex or Allen at the end. Gotta line it up there. All right. Okay. All right, there we go. That's it. Our automatic transmission fluid is done. This 30,000 mile service is done. We did the automatic transmission fluid, we did the transfer case assembly with the hypoid gear oil, and we did our rear differential fluid. So we're good for another 30,000 miles on those fluids. And I hope this has been helpful to you. I'll put a whole bunch of links in the description for parts and torque specs and crush washer sizes, types of fluids, all those kind of things. So please look in the description and you'll find everything that you need there. Feel free to ask a question in the comments, and thank you for watching.